Welcome to another fun-filled Monday edition of Second City Sports. We're live and live in color right here on Sports Zone Chicago, along with Miss Lakina McGee, which is she. I am Cindy Brown. Hey, that's me. You can follow yours truly on the Twitter and the IG at SidKid80. Once again, it's SidKid80. That's SIDKID80. That's SIDKID80.
You can follow me at Katie McGill on the Twitter and at King's on the IG.
Make sure you download that Sports Zone Chicago app wherever you get your apps. You want to know why? Because we said so, that's why. And also, so you can catch up on our other live shows that we have airing throughout the week. So you have it to miss them. You can go back and listen and watch them at the same time. So make sure you download that Sports Zone Chicago app today. Speaking of Sports Zone Chicago, you can follow us on all social media platforms on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. Once again, please find Sports Zone Chicago on all social media platforms on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. You say you want to subscribe to our podcast. We know many of you have. For those of you that have not, we are available on all podcast platforms at WARR Media Podcast. That's WARR Media PODCASTS. And we are also available on that iHeartRadio app. And speaking of WARR Media, please give them a follow at WARR Media on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. Once again, that's at WARR Media, WARR Media on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. And thank you very much in advance for your support.
Like, share, subscribe, and tell your friends.
We are unapologetically fun, and we have very definite opinions. You have any definite opinions during our 2-hour extravaganza we call a Sports Talk Radio Show? You can always hit us up in the comment section at Sports Zone Chicago's Facebook page or at Sports Zone Chicago YouTube. Type in those questions and comments in the comments section. Lakina will get them up on the screen for you. But decide to troll, indoors do something silly or stupid. I have to give Lakina full power to give you fools to be a lame be about.
Bye-bye.
But before we begin, we must remind you that you can also catch Sports Zone Chicago now available on Roku TV. That's right. So celebrate with the squad and give it the program. Sports Zone Chicago is now on Roku TV. If you already have a Roku television, just tap on that sports folder and download that Sports Zone Chicago app. If you don't have a Roku TV, but you have some handheld devices laying around, iPhone, your iPhone, iPad, iTouch, your Chromebook like I'm using right now, or Lakina's personal PC computer, just go to the Google Play Store and download that Roku TV app. And access Sports Zone Chicago through that avenue. So no more excuses. Celebrate the squad and get with the program. Sports Zone Chicago is now available on Roku TV 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. Live and on demand.
Anytime, anywhere.
And you know we will provide.
Okay, so we got a busy show coming up here on Second City Sports. We're at the halfway mark of the baseball season. We'll talk both the Cubs and Sox as they're going into seemingly different directions. We'll also have one of our faves from WBEZ, our girl, Miss Cheryl Rae Stout, to join us talk Chicago sports happenings from Bears, upcoming training camp, what the baseball teams are going to be doing, the Bulls and all that stuff in between. So we got you covered there. Of course, old school TV Monday and a whole lot more. So but let's get started talking some baseball. And here are some highlights for both the Cubs and the Sox yesterday.
Cubs dugout chirping at McKay, and rightfully so. He had a really wide zone at the beginning of the game. Oh, and Rossi's already kicked out of the game. Wow. First inning.
And Rossi's going to come out and get his money's worth. Swing and a high fly ball left field. This is well struck at the wall, and that one is gone. Seiya Suzuki will touch them all. 2. Line drive, sinking, base hit center field. 1 run is in. Here comes Morel. He's in. Yan Gomes off the bench. A 2-run single, and we're starting over, tied 4-4. Way high, and here comes Nico scrambling across.
And the batter is Elvis Andrus.
This one off the glove of Contreras. His throw is into center field and rolling near the Dan Ryan.
Not particularly well caught.
Muff at the plate.
That's through, and the Sox get a run thanks to Colas' speed and the Cardinal defense specifically. And Carlos Perez has grabbed a bat to hit for Sebi Zavala. Huge spot for Carlos. On the ground at third base. It's a short hop, and it's booted by Gorman. You could see it coming a mile away, and the Sox
50 feet away.
In the air, left field side. Burleson underneath. Here comes Remillard, and the Sox take the lead. If that ends up.
And those highlights come courtesy of the Marquee Sports Network in Chicago and NBC Sports Chicago for the White Sox. Lakina, we'll start off with the Cubs first. They are 42 and 47 heading to the All-Star break. They take 2-3 from the New York Yankees this past weekend to end the first half, of course, with a 3-0 shutout on Friday night. Jameson Taillon, who's been injured off and on through the first half of the year, he pitched a one-hit shutout. No one saw that coming. And, of course, Saturday's game, the Yankees came back to beat the Cubs. And, of course, yesterday the Cubs took advantage of the mistakes made by the Yankees bullpen to take the series 2 out of 3 in the Bronx. Lakina, we said this all year long. We'll say it again. That Cubs offense is steady, and I think it's going to be fine. That's not the problem. The problem is their bullpen. The starting pitching outside of Friday wasn't the greatest, but it held up. But it was more about those bats in the Bronx this past weekend.
Yeah, going back to that Taillon start on Friday, I mean, I don't think anybody saw that come. Like you said, a one-hit shutout. I mean, he's the first pitcher who, to have that, on the road at Yankee Stadium since, the Orioles, Daniel Cabrera did all the way back in 2006. Only two other pitchers have done that since 1990, Bartolo Colon in 2000 and Pedro Martinez in a year earlier in 99. No one really saw that coming. I mean, I think, look, I think we're starting to see the Taillon that we saw this season, last season, last few seasons when the Cubs picked him up. He's been sort of up and down, but he's starting to kind of get it going. So I think this is a good thing for him. Now, as far as the bats go, I think those like the first two wins that they've had ever in the Bronx, if I'm not mistaken, or maybe the first time in a long time. So I was a little bit surprised that they've got 2 out of 3 for the Yankees. I mean, I thought that maybe, especially after on Sunday's game, yesterday's game, I thought, you know what? Okay, yeah, you won 1. I mean, that's fine, but sure enough, they ended up winning 2 out of 3. So I think that we saw the bat, especially yesterday. Gomes came off the bench and got a 2-run single to kind of, sort of, got the Cubs back in. And then, of course, after that, I mean, the bats, kind of got it going again. Also, to the bullpen is as crazy and a little bit up and down as they've been. They did just enough to kind of hang on. And because I think the Yankees had, about like 9 or 10 guys left on base. So they did what they could to get out of jam. So that's they're 7 back of Cincinnati. I know we'll talk about Cincinnati after the break, but I don't think they're going to pull away from that division. I just don't. So if you're Jed Hoyer or Connor Hawkins, we'll ask our buddy Cheryl this at the top of the hour. I feel like you should try to maybe get some mid-relief help at the very least, and probably maybe get a back-end starter so you can try. Look, no one's going to pull away from that NL Central. So I feel like try to make some minor moves. He'll get your team in it. You got a pretty solid schedule in the second half. The Cubs can make some moves here.
Also, too, let's give Seiya Suzuki some props as well. He knocked in 2 RBI yesterday. His bat is starting to heat up as well. But here's a dilemma I want to pose to you and to our listeners and viewers out there. I want to see your comments in the comment section at Sports Zone Chicago's Facebook page or at Sports Zone Chicago on YouTube. If the Cubs are out of it by July 31st, do you trade Marcus Stroman? Because we know we'll get into the Sox in a little bit here, but if the Cubs stumble coming out of the gate for the second half, I think it's without the question that GM Carter Hawkins and Jed Hoyer will trade Marcus Stroman. You heard what our guy Eugene Magachach from the Bigs had to say about him last week, with the Cubs organization think about him. The fans love him. It looks like his teammates love him, but the upper echelons of the Cubs organization have a different view of him. But with that being said, Marcus Stroman's had an all-star season. Of course, he's not going to play in tomorrow's all-star game, but he's had a phenomenal season. He's top 5 in the Cy Young voting, in my opinion, if the vote would be held today. But would you trade Marcus Stroman? Because you're going to get more back-end value for him right now. The Cubs stumble come out of the second half.
Well, I think that's something that I'm sure that I know, Jen and Connor are going to have to think about. So, like I said, we'll ask our girl Cheryl this, Cheryl Rae Stout this, at the top. But I think, look, if you're still right, if you're within like maybe 3 or 4 by the time the 31st comes, I think you can kind of like, you wonder like, okay, maybe try to maybe get that bullpen help and whatnot. So looking at the Cubs schedule coming out the gate, after the All-Star break on Friday, they have Boston. They host Boston at Wrigley. I mean, Boston's been up and down, so they could, there's no reason why they can't, at least win 2 out of 3 in that series. I don't think there's no reason that, that they couldn't, they can't do that. Then after that, they play Washington. There's no reason why they shouldn't sweep the Nationals. They got a 4-gamer, as they are hosting the St. Louis. No reason why they can't win at least 3 out of 4 at the very least. So of course you got the 2-gamer against the Sox, at G rate. So I think it's kind of like I said, it's set up for the Cubs that could perhaps maybe get within a couple of games and perhaps make some moves by the time. I mean, they're good. If they can be within 3 or 4, I think they should be buyers in the trade deadline.
We'll see what happens as we're less, I think, 2.5 weeks away, Lakina, 3 weeks from the trade deadline. If my math is correct, let me look at my calendar here. So we're about almost 3 weeks away from the trade deadline as we're at the All-Star break. You're listening to Second City Sports on Chicago City. Lakina hanging out here with you, talking Chicago baseball. We have a few minutes left before we pause for the calls at the bottom of the hour. Let's get into those sad-ass Chicago White Sox, Lakina. Yours truly was there for the last 2 games of that series over the weekend. Of course, they dropped both of them. Obviously, it wasn't my fault, LOL. But Lucas Giolito and Touki Toussaint, who replaced Mike Clevenger, who's on the injured list, he did not pitch bad on Saturday. No. Once again, Lakina, the White Sox can score runs in bunches, but when they struggle to score runs, you get men on base, but you cannot bring one home, and that's what happened on Saturday. And, of course, yesterday, Giolito, he did a couple of mistakes, but he really pitched his tail off. And the Sox did score a couple of runs, but Lakina in the bottom of the 10th inning, how ironic how the first half of the season ends for the White Sox with Tim Anderson striking out. It's just been a disappointing year for him. Been a disappointing year for the whole team in general. But, Lakina, I keep harping back to, is this Sox team or a bad team? Do I think they are a bad team like Oakland? No, but they're playing like it. It's just nothing is clicking on all cylinders right now. I said it on Friday. I'll say it again. You can back up the truck. I know the fan in me is coming out. But realistically, I think about 2 or 3 guys, if this continues, which probably will, but if this continues as they'll face the Atlanta Braves next weekend in Atlanta, if they lose that series and then they're on the road again, I believe 4 in New York against the Mets next week, and then to wrap up the road trip, they'll have 3 at Minnesota. If they come out of that road trip under 500, it's time to back up the truck. I think it's time to back up the truck now, but realistically, I think about 2 or 3 guys should be off this team right now.
Yeah, I mean, look, and you're right. They have all of them on the road. Atlanta, the Mets, and Minnesota. So it's right until before the trade deadline, of course, that 2-gamer against the Cubs. Now, for me, I think, look, do I think they're like the worst, Oakland bad? No, but look, they lost 2 out of 3 to Oakland, so it's kind of hard to make that kind of proclamation by saying that. And I think for me, I think, look, they've got you. Lance has actually been pitching pretty good the last couple of starts. Lucas Giolito has been looking great. He's probably the one consistent pitcher that the Sox have. The bats, I mean, I know Burger's, kind of taking a step back. I know Vaughn's taking a step back. Eloy, he's Eloy. And look, I think...
Yeah, your boy had another dumb moment yesterday.
Yes, he did. I know, right? So, boy, it is for Mr. Eloy, Mr. Jimenez. But I just feel like, you know what? Look, I'm not for tearing things down, but I think in this case you may have to tear it all down and start over. I know people have said that maybe probably get rid of Rick Hahn and Kenny Williams and all those guys and bring in a Theo Epstein. I think Theo is in line to take over as commissioner of baseball. I don't think he wants to go back into that grind of being in the front office and whatnot. So I just don't see that happen. Oh, there are some Sox fans that feel this way, but I just don't think that's the case for Epstein. But going back to the Sox for a second, I just think that it just you can't play fundamentals. You can't have drops and not be able to catch the ball or field a ball. I mean, you guys are supposedly major leaguers. Like, what you're forgetting how to catch, or you can't throw strikes. You're throwing it high on the inside. It's just I know John Greenberg does a great job over at the Athletics. Said that congrats to anybody who has to watch the White Sox for the next 4 days. I would say, well, I mean, hey, let's party like Patrick Beverly did a couple years ago when the team was that playing. But yeah, I mean, it's just one of those things where you're just just put us out of our misery. Just put Sox fans out of our misery. I can't watch this team anymore. I can't. It's always something. I don't know how you feel about it, Sid, but for me, it's always that.
Yeah, just a couple of observations before we break, as I know we're running up against it. Nice bobblehead Saturday for Luis Robert. Maybe he'll make an appearance or not on this program. We'll see. We'll see. Number 2, as I said before, I'll say it again. I like Kendall Graveman, but he's not a closer. You saw that again yesterday. And number 3, The Sox are 0-9 when their starters strike out 10 or more batters. Let me repeat that again. The White Sox are 0-9 when their starters strike out 10 or more batters. What is that?
Yuck. Yeah, it is. Yeah, I mean, like, it is. Yeah, it is just. There's really, like I said, it's comical. I mean, their A game's back. Like you said, we talked about the schedule coming out the gate after the All-Star break on starting Friday. I'm done. I'm with that. I know, they should call flashes. They say like 4 or 5 in a row, a couple of times, but they're going back to exactly why they are who you thought they were. So I don't know. We're going to take a really quick break. Of course, we'll talk about the rest of baseball and an accomplishment for, I know Sid feels about the Tigers, but they had a really solid accomplishment over the weekend. Also, too, some other, probably one player from the Diamondbacks that you know a little bit more about. Also, to the rest of baseball, we'll give, grades and, and whatnot. So we're going to talk about baseball, this hour to the midway point. So, Lakina McGee, Cindy Brown, Second City Sports on Sports Zone Chicago. More Diamond Talk coming up right after this.
This year, my mom got me the perfect bag for back to school.
These colorful binders help me stay organized.
These headphones are just what I need for studying.
These new sneakers are just what I needed for the new year.
This jacket is a real must-have.
My parents got me the skateboard I wanted. It's pretty cool.
These scissors really come in handy in art class. These colored pencils, too.
These new socks, they can be a real lifesaver.
I finally got my own phone to stay in touch with my mom.
Trisha's having a sleepover tonight. Can I go?
I wonder about Lucy's friends. What should I say? I know you're only 10, but one of these days a friend will offer you a drink. And alcohol at your age can lead to so many things. None of them good.
So can I go to the sleepover?
Lucy, I want you to promise me
I
something.
finished my homework.
Bigger promise. If there's any drinking, I want you to say, "No thanks, not my thing."
Mom.
I promise you, your real friends won't care. Deal?
Sure.
Really?
I promise, Mom.
They really do hear you.
Did you pack your toothbrush?
For tips on how to start the talk, visit underagedrinking.samhsa.gov, a public service message from the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration.
Hey, this is Dr. J, and I listen to Sean and Maya in the morning.
Oh, sorry. Welcome back to Second City Sports on the Monday edition. We're live in living color right here on Sports Zone Chicago. She is Lakina McGee. I am Sydney Brown. You can follow yours truly on the Twitter and the IG at SidKid80. Once again, at SidKid80, that's SIDKID80, SIDKID80.
You can find me at Keenan McGill on the Twitter and at Keenan again on IG.
And if you have any questions or comments for us as we still talk, as we'll go around the world of Major League Baseball, you can hit us up in the comments section at Sports Zone Chicago's Facebook page or Sports Zone Chicago on YouTube. Type in those questions or comments in the comments section. Lakino will get them up on the screen for you. Shout out to our good friend Brandon. He says he's using the Roku TV app. I hope we're looking good on that Roku TV, young man, as you're viewing us and watching us. And the rest of you out there could do the same. Just if you have a Roku TV, just tap on the sports folder and download that Sports Zone Chicago app. If you don't, you have some handheld devices laying around. Just go to the Google Play Store, download that Roku TV app, and find Sports Zone Chicago. You can view us, listen to us, and watch us all at the same time.
Anytime, anywhere. Yep. So,
Yes.
So let's talk some more baseball as we we're at the midway point of the season. What caught your eye this weekend?
We'll get it out the way. Those overrated Detroit Tigers, they defeated the Toronto Blue Jays on Saturday 2-0 to record the first combined no-hitter in Tigers history, the second no-hitter overall in Major League Baseball this season. Matt Manning, along with two other relievers, combined for that no-hitter for the Tigers. Of course, Manning had 5 strikeouts through 6 2/3 innings. Of course, Foley and Aaron Lang, their closer, came in to shut down the Blue Jays to save the game. Lakina, I don't know if you caught some of that post-game afterwards on Bally Sports Detroit. Shout out to Mickey Thompson, the Trevor Thompson, the field reporter, longtime Detroit sports broadcaster. A couple of those Tigers players decided to use some foul language. I get it, that's their work area, their space, but you got to know that you're on TV. Clean up the language.
It's the emotion, you get excited, you swear. I mean, look, we've seen it happen in sports. We've seen it with most guys wearing championships. So it's not that bad. I mean, it's actually this is the 20th combined no-hitter in MLB history. 10 of them have come within the last 10 seasons. It's Detroit's ninth no-hitter in franchise history. So shout out to those three for and look, doing a no-hitter, as one pitcher, doing it could be tough, but you do it combined. I mean, that's even better because you set it up, but then you're approaching the pitch count. Then you got to you're putting your bullpen not to blow it. So thankfully in this case, they didn't Foley and Langdon blow it for Manning. So congrats. Unfortunately, that was the only win of that series. They ended up losing 2 out of 4 to Toronto. But on the flip side though, for my Blue Jays, of course, they get a much needed series win after losing 2 out of 3 to Oakland early last week. So winning 2 out of 3, they're kind of right there. We'll talk about Tampa in a second, but just sort of one of those days where they were able to bounce back from that high of that no hitter, being no hit by those 3 pitchers from the Tigers. The Blue Jays came back and ended up winning it in pretty dramatic fashion. So.
Yeah, and speaking of your other team, how about those Seattle Mariners, the host city for tomorrow night's MLB All-Star game? They take 3 or 4 from the Houston Astros on the road. Sorry, Brandon, we had to talk about this, but
sorry, Brandon.
but those Seattle Mariners, it looks like they're starting to come up. Remember last year around the same weekend, they had that 14-game winning streak following that fight against the LA Angels, and that catapulted them throughout the second half of the season last year. Of course, qualifying for the playoffs before bowing down that wild card round to Toronto. But can this team do it again? They're at 500 right now at 44-44. Julio Rodriguez is starting to pick it up here a little bit. Ty France, as I said before, the last couple of weeks, I'm concerned about their pitching, particularly their bullpen, but their offense needs to pick it up big time in the second half.
Yes, they should. And yes, they need to. And they're still right there in the AL West. I mean, they're only 6 games back from the Rangers, who had a pretty rough weekend. We'll talk about them in a second. But yeah, I mean, look, I think Seattle, this is sort of the Seattle team that we expect. I mean, I thought that maybe they're starting to kind of get it going here, especially winning 3 out of 4 against your division rivals. Look, they're one of those things where you're kind of like, look, you can't still getting off that high. So yeah, Rodriguez is starting to become, proving why he deserved that big salary bump. And look, I mean that whole thing with the little Jarek Kelenic and Logan Gilbert, they were able to cement that 3 out of 4 series win against the Astros. So yeah, look, the pitch has been really good. They actually showed some promise over the weekend. Of course, that was been like the big struggle for them, especially when they were in the playoffs last year. Now, you went 3 out of 4 against the division, not only your division rivals, but the defending World Series champs. I mean, you got to be feeling pretty good, going into the break.
Yeah, and that's only going to give that team that much more confidence. Like, as we mentioned, what they did last year and what they did over the weekend to end the first half on a solid note. They just have to gather themselves and believe in themselves and do the little things, and I think they'll be right there. But as we said before, like, I'm sure we're going to get into more here in a few minutes. But both the NL and the AL wildcard races, I think, is going to be a one for the ages this year because you don't know who's going to take it because you have a bunch of mediocre teams that are really bunched up together, and we'll see what happens at the trade deadline. But it's really to see who's going to separate themselves from the pack.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be interesting. We'll talk a little bit more about that in a second with the wild card races because it is getting very, very cluttered, I guess, as they say. So yeah, but on the flip side for Houston, I mean, look, this is not what you want. Going into the All-Star break. I mean, you did get that 2-game sweep against Colorado. You did get win 3 out of 4 against Texas, but the fact that they lost 3 out of 4 at home to Seattle, I mean, that's not what you want. Going into the break. So you're 2 games back of Texas, but yet you've got Seattle right there behind you now. So this is going to be interesting to see. The injuries are kind of catching up to them a little bit. So I want to see how they are coming out of the gate after break starting Friday.
Yeah, like you said, your Astros. The only frustrating thing about it is you couldn't take advantage of Texas struggles as they lose 2 out of 3 in our nation's capital this past weekend to the Washington Nationals. And if you, like I said, Houston's still going to be in this AL West race. Texas is a very good team, despite losing Jacob deGrom, despite taking a short stint, a punch in the mouth with their starting rotation this last go around. It's still going to be a fight to the finish. Houston, as you mentioned, has been there before. Texas hasn't. Texas got off to a good start, but Houston has experience, and hopefully, like you said, they can get some of their injured guys back, and I think they'll give Texas a run here in the second half.
Should be interesting to see what happens with that. Now going to the AL Central, of course, the Guardians now have a half-game lead over Minnesota. They couldn't get the sweep, the 4-game sweep against the Royals. Winning only 3 out of 4, but they are, leaning in. So it's going to be interesting though with the Guardians because I think, look, Ryan Yarbrough had that was definitely another, a great story there. He had facial fractures. He pitched a one-hit gem to help the Royals get past that to avoid the sweep. But on the flip side though, for the Guardians, I mean, you had your shot to pass. You still got the half-game lead going into the break. So it's really going to be interesting to see what these two teams, I'm talking about the Guardians and the Twins, what these two teams will do. They both need pitching. They definitely use another middle relief. So this is going to be interesting to see, especially these next few weeks to see where these teams are. And I think they play each other, a couple of times before the trade deadline. So that's going to be really interesting to see where these two teams are going to be at.
I'm impressed by Cleveland, what they're doing more this year than last year. Last year, they got out to a bad start, just like the White Sox. But unlike the White Sox, they took advantage of the schedule, and they got on a hot streak after the All-Star break. We told you what was going to happen. The Sox, they get it together last year. But back to this year, I'm more impressed with what the Guardians have done because – remember, Tristan McKenzie, I don't think has pitched at all this year. And Aaron Savali, the other starter, has been on the injury list as well. And Shane Bieber, he's still one of the top 10 pitchers in baseball, but he's been roughed up at times this year. And they have injuries to some of their players on offense. Remember Josh Naylor? I know he was hurt a couple weeks ago with his finger. I know they brought with Josh Bell, that free agent pickup from the San Diego Padres to play first base. Of course, you still have Jose Ramirez at third base. And you still have Stephen Kwan, one of the best leadoff hitters in baseball. The Cleveland they do have the offense to put it together. The players to put it together on offense. They just got to get their pitching situated and mostly their bullpen. Outside of Emmanuel Clase, who's one of the best relievers in the game, they just haven't had time. And they had time, but I should say they just couldn't put it together. Had a chance to put it together for long stretches, just like the White Sox. But I think throughout you can rank all the teams in this AL Central Division. The best roster on paper is the White Sox, but the team that you can get the most out of is those Cleveland Guardians.
Yeah, that's going to be interesting to see. Like you said, Sammy, it's going to be interesting. Especially we'll see where both the Guardians and the Twins are by the time the trade deadline rolls around at the end of this month, going into the first of next month. So yeah, it's gonna be a lot. It might be a seesaw back and forth between those two. So yeah, they both got pretty interesting schedules coming out of the gate. Yeah, I think the Guardian schedule is a little bit easier than the Twins schedule. So we'll see what happens with that. Now going to the AL East, I mean, the Rays, snapped a 7-game win streak, avoiding the sweep, against Atlanta. They're 35-15 at home. That is the best in baseball. They also entered the All-Star break, leading the AL East for the first time in franchise history, which is kind of crazy to think about it. They've been to a couple World Series, but they really needed that. If you're the Rays, you really needed that. You didn't want to go into 8-game losing streak, go into a break. So the fact that they were able to kind of salvage salvage at least not getting swept, I think that helps them a little bit confidence wise. But I'm a little concerned about the Rays. I mean, you've got the Baltimore's right there, the Blue Jays are sort of right there, and the Yankees are right there too. Even though I know they fired their hitting coach, but it'll be interesting to see what that AL East I think will still have a lot to be decided. I feel like.
Yeah, on the flip side, let's go to that game yesterday with Atlanta. Spencer Strider, one of the best young pitchers in baseball. I think he's a better version of Dylan Cease, if you know what I'm saying. He's the NL version of Dylan Cease. He had 11 strikeouts yesterday through 6 1/3. And you need young guys like that in that pitching staff of the Braves to step up. And he's been doing that this season. On the flip side for Tampa Bay, as we said, you knew that a time that they were going to struggle was going to come, because that it happens. It's the nature of sports, especially given the type of historic start they got out to in April and early May. So if you're a Tampa Bay fan, you shouldn't be too worried. But if they come out the gates in the second half struggling again, then there's going to be a problem, because as you mentioned, Baltimore is right there, one of the top teams in the American League. Toronto's starting to pick it up. The Yankees, if and when they ever get Aaron Judge back, they're going to be a problem as well. So I'm not going to say be casual about this if you're a Tampa Bay fan, but you got to start strong coming out of the gates in the second half. That's all I'll say about that team, because as I said before, that's a very good team, a fundamentally sound team. They don't beat themselves too much, but they got to have a strong second half, because those other teams are coming. And let's not forget about Boston, even though I don't take them seriously, but they did something that the White Sox should have done a couple of weeks ago. They sweep the Oakland A's. I'm talking about Boston. But if Boston ever wakes up out of delusion and get it together, they could be a problem as well. But I'm looking, as you said, I'm looking at Baltimore, the Yankees, and Toronto, really challenging Tampa Bay. Should Tampa Bay continue to struggle to start the second half?
Yeah, that's going to be interesting. It got a little bit interesting with the AL East, especially with the 7-game losing streak. So, Baltimore. Let's talk about Baltimore for a second. They got a great look. We talked about Baltimore for the last month and a half. They swept Minnesota. I know that helps Sox fans a little bit, but you couldn't take care of your own business. But for me, I think Baltimore is one of those teams where they're very young. They got a lot of talent on that team, and I feel like this is going to be where it gets a little bit interesting. For them. We know Wilson Santander. We know about Reisman, Mullins, among others. So it's going to be interesting to see what this team does. Especially, do they make a move for a pitcher? Do they? They got a great pitching staff themselves. But it's going to be interesting to see what's going to be. Do they? Maybe try to get a veteran. Get a veteran player with a little bit of playoff experience, kind of help them out there. But it's going to be interesting to see where Baltimore will be by the time the July 31st, August 1st deadline rolls around.
Yeah, I think I brought this up on our show on Friday. Do they get a veteran pitcher without mortgaging too much of their future, like a Lucas Giolito, or if Marcus Stroman of the Cubs becomes available? Well, what will the front office of the Orioles do then? Do they get another veteran player? Because remember, they picked up Aaron Hicks off the scrap heap when he was released by the Yankees over a month ago, and he's made a big difference for Baltimore. So, like you said, do they pick up another bat? Or me personally, I think they need another starter, a veteran starter like a Giolito or Stroman, somewhere along those lines, because they have one of the best bullpens in the American League. I know their setup guy, whose name escapes me for the moment. I know their closer, Felix Bautista. They're both going to the All-Star game tomorrow night. And so the Baltimore team is right there. I think they just need that one veteran starter to perhaps push them over the top.
That's probably especially if they want to. They're still right there for the AL East. So I feel like this is going to get very interesting. And like you said, I mean, this is going to be kind of where there's going to be like that little sense of where it's going to be that urgency. So yeah, I'm wondering like, okay, where this is going to be the team where, well, like I said, we'll see where they are by the time the All-Star break comes. Like, I think them, the Orioles, the Blue Jays, and the Yankees are all, and maybe the Red Sox too, again, if they can get themselves their act together. But it'll be, interesting to see what happens with that. Now let's go to the NL, I should say, for a second. Of course, Atlanta failed to get that sweep against the Rays, but they're still, they've been very solid. Ronald Acuna, apparently he's up there with Ohtani as having one of the best-selling jerseys in Major League Baseball. And look, we know about them, of course. The pitching and such. They're as long as they're pulling away from that NL East. So what do you think? Do you think can they will they kind of like not look back and or look, do they make a trade? Do they stand pat? What do you think?
I think Atlanta, if they're going to add somebody, it'll be somebody for their bench or perhaps the back end of their rotation. We'll see what they do. But the rest of the NL East, I think is Atlanta versus everybody else in the National League in general right now because of the way they're playing. But the NL East is still kind of, I'm not going to say up for grabs, but I think second place in the NL East is up for grabs. You saw what the Marlins did over the weekend, taking 2 out of 3 from Philadelphia. I'm still worried about the Marlins a little bit, even though I respect what they've done this year. But I take them more seriously than Cincinnati. I know we'll get to them in a second. But Philadelphia, I know they after beating Tampa Bay on the road last week, they, like I mentioned, they hit a rush in Miami over the weekend. But I still think they're going to be hurt from the Mets. I know they play better as of late, but I'm not buying them. So I'm counting them out as far as a playoff qualification is concerned for this year. But I think the Braves will hang on to win the NL East. But I think that the Phillies first and then the Marlins second will make things very interesting in the second half. You muted, Lakina.
My bad. I thought I had to mute myself.
Okay.
Sorry about that. Michael's, technology, folks. You gotta love it. I mean, for the Phillies, look, I feel like the Phillies might, like I said, looking at their schedule, I think the Phillies have a little bit of a tougher second half, a little tougher. I should say a little tougher, a little easier second half schedule, I should say, than overall than the Marlins. So I think the Marlins, I know they've had some great, a great staff of young talent. We've talked about it for the last couple of weeks, but I feel like this is sort of like, I feel like the Phillies are starting to show you why they made it all the way to the World Series last year. So I'm wondering, like, okay, could this be kind of like that thing where they start kind of turning around a little bit? And they do play Atlanta a few more times, so they could perhaps maybe try to chip away at that lead that Atlanta has in the division. So again, we'll see what happens. But yeah, I think that AL East, I don't know. I wouldn't say it's all like Atlanta, but I think the Phillies may make things interesting. Excuse me. I know they're like 12 back, but I think they could still make it a little bit interesting.
And if you're Florida, like you said, they play Atlanta and Philadelphia again a few more times after the break. So if you're Florida trying to lock down one of those 3 wild card spots in the National League, you're going to have to beat Philadelphia. You're going to have to beat Atlanta, and you're going to have to beat, to a lesser extent, the New York Mets as well, which they've done so a little bit this year. So if for the Marlins to take the next step, they're going to have to beat Philadelphia. They're going to have to beat Atlanta. And I don't know when they play the Dodgers again. I don't have the schedule in front of me, but some of those teams out there in the West, if it's on their schedule in the second half, they ought to beat them too.
Yeah, so it should be interesting to see what the Marlins will be by that point. Now, let's see here. Now, let's talk about the Reds for a second. I know, Eli De La Cruz. I mean, yes, of course, again. They lose 2 out of 3 to the Brewers, but I know that, he hit another home run over the weekend. But, like you said, it's going to be interesting to see where this team is. I think no one really expected Cincinnati to be up there. So what do you do if you're the Reds brass? I mean, you try to maybe stand pat and maybe, because I don't think they really expected them to kind of be leading the NL Central at this point in the season. But look, we talked about all the great young players that they have on that squad. I don't really trust Cincinnati. I don't think they're there yet. But I think they'll make it interesting. I think the Brewers are right there, the only 1 game back. I still think the Cubs might perhaps maybe make things a little bit interesting in the NL Central. So yeah, I don't think. No one's playing a pull away from that NL Central just yet. I just don't see it.
Yeah, shout out to Eli De La Cruz. He stole second, he stole third, he stole home in their only win in that series on Saturday, which was phenomenal. I think I saw it said that they're 21-6 since he was called up last month. And so that's when Cincinnati really took off. But as you mentioned, their starting pitching has not been that great. Their bullpen's been okay, average at best. But it's all led by that offense and the hustle of Ellie De La Cruz. Don't forget about Jonathan India. And don't forget about that veteran Joey Votto, who's been back, who just came back to the lineup a few weeks ago. So Cincinnati, I don't see them hanging on. Now, if they do win a division, I wouldn't be mad. Shout out to them because they are fun to watch as well. But I just think that their lack of starting pitch is going to come back to bite them in the butt. They have the offensive talent in the world, just like like the way we talked about Baltimore last year, Lakina.
Yep.
I think that's the way that we should look at the Cincinnati Reds team this year. Now, if they happen to catch fire in the second half and win it, great. I'm not mad at them for. Like I said, Ellie De La Cruz is one of the best exciting young players in the game. Too bad he cannot play in tomorrow's All-Star game because he came up too late. But with that being said, I think Cincinnati, if you're right there at the trade deadline, you shouldn't mortgage your future. Like you said, the organization is expected to be like this. But you should just stay the course. Maybe you pick up a veteran or the scrap heap here and there, but you're not going to mortgage your future.
No, you're not. Nor they should they. So because they got a lot of great young talent, they did actually drive some good young talent too. So let's go to the NL West real quick. And look, we talked about them. Of course, they're now the Diamondbacks and the Dodgers are now tied in NL West. So Sid, I mean, it's going to be interesting. I think with that. I mean, look, there is actually one young player that we haven't talked about too much that we probably should. Corbin Carroll, the rookie from the Diamondbacks. I mean, he became the it's going to be interesting to see what he actually already has 15 home runs and 25 stolen bases, including 2 walk-offs this year. I'm talking about Carroll from the Diamondbacks, definitely making a case for him, perhaps maybe win NL Rookie of the Year. So do you think that maybe the Diamondbacks can give the Dodgers a little bit of a run? Can they stay with the Dodgers? And that it looks like, we'll talk about the Dodgers in a second, but I think it looks like they're starting to kind of figure things out. I'm talking about the Dodgers are. But yeah, the Diamondbacks, I'm a little concerned about them at this point.
I want to see how they do in the second half because they're going to have to play the Dodgers again. They're going to have to play the Padres again. And they're going to have to play some of the NL East teams again as well. So I'm kind of in a wait-and-see mode. I know they gave their field manager a contract extension, so congratulations to him on that. But I'm kind of wait-and-see mode up until the July 31st trade deadline for Arizona. I think just like Cincinnati, they're going to cause some problems, but I don't know if they're going to do enough to overtake the Dodgers. But I think they'll hang around and cause some problems.
I agree. I think they'll definitely be right there near the top for maybe not for the West, but maybe they'll definitely be right there for the wild card race. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with that. Now, of course, the Dodgers, real quick, they won their mini 2-gamer against the Angels, and Mookie Betts has been hitting the ball very well lately and on a tear. He's only one of 2 players in MLB history to hit 10 leadoff home runs before the All-Star break, joining all the way back to Bobby Bonds, all the way back in 1973. So what do you think? I think they're starting to finally kind of get it going. I know they still have some injuries. Talk about the Dodgers, but a lot of those guys are starting to come back. So what do you think the Dodgers will be by the time we commence on Friday? Well, when they start playing again?
Yeah, I think they'll eventually take over first place, but it's going to be difficult. It's going to be difficult only because their bullpens we talked about all year long that it's been struggling. The GM Andrew Freeman is looking for a couple of bullpen arms right now, but they got some good years out of their young players, including James Outman, and don't forget about former Cub Jason Hayward. He's having a renaissance of his season.
Pretty well, yeah, he's been playing pretty well so far. We're kind of sorry to see a little bit of the old Jason Hayward we saw in the early those first few years with the Cubs. So yeah, they're starting to get it going as well. So we'll see what happens with them. But yeah, should be a lot of fun coming up. And of course, as we get ready for the All-Star break. Yeah, that'll be tomorrow in Seattle. As Sid said, he got the home run derby tonight. So yeah, with Mr. Louis Roberts. So the Robert Jr., I should say. So make sure you guys check that out. So yeah, so still, so much to do still with baseball. So yeah, I mean, just enjoy the baseball. It should be a great atmosphere in Seattle.
Yep. Stay tuned for more sports and more fun as Second City Sports Monday edition continues with Cheryl Rae Stout from WBEZ 91.5 FM in Chicago. I'm Sid Deslakina. You're listening to Sports Zone Chicago.
I'm scared.
you're in my lane? No, not at all. Are you not paying attention? Are you texting? I was just checking in with my mom. I was telling her that I thought we'd be home by 6. It's okay. There's enough time. Just pay attention. I'm not even halfway through my text. There's no way. I'm not even going to look up. My babies are in the car. You have to pay attention. It's just supposed to be a quick text. I'm so sorry.
Hi, I'm Tom Brady, the director of DODEA. September is National Suicide Prevention and Awareness Month. The simple act of reaching out and caring for those in our communities is something we all can do. Just being there for someone you care about can be a tremendous first step in getting them access to confidential resources and support that they need. It only takes one person and one small act and 1 minute to make a difference. Let's make a difference.
Many will hear the calling. Few will earn the title. United States Marine. The few, the proud, the Marines.
Welcome back to hour number 2 of Second City Sports, the Monday edition. We're live and live in color right here on Sports Zone Chicago. I'm Sid. Lakina will be rejoining me shortly because she has audio issues right now. But you can follow yours truly on the Twitter and the IG at SidKid80. Once again, it's SidKid80. That's SIDKID80. That's SIDKID80. You have any questions or comments for us, especially for our next guest, you can always hit us up in the comments section at Sports Zone Chicago's Facebook page or at Sports Zone Chicago on YouTube. Type in your questions or comments in the comments section. Lakina will get them up on the screen for you. Or yours surely will get them up on the screen for you. Hopefully, Lakina will rejoin us here coming up. But right now, our guest to kick off hour number 2 of this program, she's a young Chicago sports broadcasting legend. She's a friend of the program. She covers Chicago sports for WBEZ 91.5 FM Chicago. Here comes our mentor in the great Miss Cheryl Rae Stout. Cheryl, welcome back to the show. How are you?
Thank you. How are you doing, Sid?
Doing great. We talked about baseball for the last hour or so. We'll get it out the way. The Chicago Cubs, we'll start with them first. I'm trying to keep my headache down about the White Sox. I know we'll get to them in a couple of minutes, but the Cubs are 42-47 right now, right in the middle of the pack in the NL Central. They take 2 out of 3 in New York against the Yankees. What do you think about the Cubs' first half of the season, their performance so far?
It's been okay. I mean, you got some bright spots. You look at Nico Horner, what he's been able to do and being able to transition from shortstop to second base, and he's been very productive at the plate. You look at some good free agent signings. Cody Bellinger, who's come back from his injury, is really shown that he's marketable to be in a trade. And you look at Justin Steele and Marcus Stroman; those two have been pitching very, very well and very, very solid. Dansby Swanson was a very good addition to free agent signing at shortstop. Collectively for the team, though, there's still some flaws. Seiya Suzuki, he had a home run yesterday, but he hasn't produced the way he was expected to produce, being a big-time free agent from Japan. They have some misses. I mean, you look at Jameson Taillon, who finally had a game that he could say, yeah, I'm great about. It was only because it was in New York, a place he was familiar with. So he has to really be, and he was a big free agent signing. He has to have that consistently the rest of the season. Time will tell. There's some flaws in their bullpen, but they're fortunate in one thing. They're in a bad division, just like the White Sox. The NL Central is bad. But the other aspect is, what do they expect? Because they're kind of like borderline. Could they win the division? And what do they do at the trading deadline? I don't know. I think when they went into London, they were really on a high. Then they come back from London and they struggle, and they finally won a series, this weekend. Question mark is, I don't know if this team is good enough to win a division, because I really think when you look at some of the other teams, yeah, it's a bad division. Cincinnati, what an exciting team.
Yes.
And sorry about my I usually do my disappear back to like after the show, so like I'm sorry. How are you, Cheryl? Great to have you back with us.
How you doing, Lakita? What's going on?
Oh, nothing much now. Like I said, I missed a first part of your says question there, but yeah, let's talk about both the Cubs and the Sox. I mean, they're both, Cubs are 7 games back. Sox are 8 games back. I know you talked a little bit about it. I got the tail end of it. So do you think the Cubs are more buyers and sellers? We know the Sox are sellers, and if so, which players do you think could be eligible to leave?
I think the Cubs have to be sellers. They may possibly win a division, but that's a question mark. That's a huge question mark. So you have Marcus Stroman, who I believe will be traded when they go to the deadline, and I think Cody Bellinger will be traded. Those are 2 chips that you have, as long as they continue to play the way they are. And the fact is, when Marcus Stroman put out there he wanted to, get a contract extension, and the team said, we're not talking about that now, he laid his cards on the table. Okay. They also laid their cards on the table by not extending him. So they want to get as much as they can out of him, and starting pitching as good as he's been able to do, that's a premium that you could get some good talent back.
Despite what's going on with the Cubs this year, both on and off the field, of course, manager David Ross, what manager doesn't come with being criticized with every move that they make? But what grade would you give David Ross for the first half of the year?
I would say a C plus. He's done well, but he hasn't done great. He makes some mistakes. We also have to put into focus, when you talk about David Ross, is what he's being told by the front office too. We don't know that information, but we know that it happens. Who to play, who not to play. But the in-game thing, he's okay. He's not great. He's going to get criticized a lot, and he's not getting along with the umpires, is he?
Right? Oh gosh, So let's talk about the like I said, the South Side for a second. I know Giolito's been a name that's been floating around. What about Tim Anderson? I know he had a couple great, not so great showings in the last few weeks, especially in that this past weekend series against the Cardinals. Do you think a change of scenery for him might be what kind of helps him turn the corner?
It may be emotionally for him, but I think the White Sox are banking on that he will, because he's had struggles once before in his career, early in his career, and he was able to manage to get out of it. And they know that he has the qualities to come back. It's been physical too. He's been really banged up. His legs, and he's had some injuries that probably should have rested longer than he has. But emotionally, you could see that he's not in sync. And change of scenery is fine and good, but I don't know what you would get for him at this point. I don't know how other teams really perceive him. I talked to scouts, and they all question him too, where he's at. So if the scouts are questioning him, GMs are questioning him. So I don't know what you would get back in exchange for a Tim Anderson at this point.
I think it's ironic how he struck out to end the game yesterday, Cheryl. And, the White Sox, not to rub it in, but I was there yesterday, as you well know. Yeah, I know you get paid to watch that, and yours surely. Well, I donated my money to the White Sox, and that's a whole nother issue. But the White Sox, when they score runs in bunches, they hit home runs, and they're one of the best teams in the league. But when they struggle to score runs, they do. Saturday's game they get shut out 3-0. But yesterday, especially in that 10th inning, you get runners on, but you can't get them across home plate. I don't understand it. I really don't.
Yesterday's game was a microcosm of the season. It's perfect example. They are consistently inconsistent. They'll get great pitching, starting pitching, like from Lucas Giolito, who always had 2 bad starts. He's really had people don't look at his numbers and you watch how he's performed. He's really played really well. And then you don't get to hits. And then your bullpen falters because of course, there's a lot of shuffling going around with all the injuries they've had. They've had too many injuries with some of their players to you have to put that into focus. But when Tim Anderson struck out, I was up in the press box. I'm going, this makes sense. This makes sense because the way he struggled, that's the exclamation point for the season at this point. They're a hot mess. Their roster has to be adjusted. They don't have a lot in their minor league system. So, and Lucas Giolito, I talked to him. He does not want to go. He really loves being in Chicago, but he knows that this is a business, and he knows that that's where we're going to go. And there's going to be a lot of suitors. Like I said, with Marcus Stroman, Lucas Giolito is going to get a lot for him because if you look at the way he's pitching, especially what happens is GMs are going to factor in the way he's been able to pitch despite not getting run support. He's not letting that bother him, where some players do. Lance Lynn, like some.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. He keeps it. Yeah. We know Lucas is very quiet about Lance, not so much. But let's lighten it up here a little bit as we talk to our buddy WBEZ's Cheryl Rae Stout here on Second City Sports on Sports on Chicago. Lakina McGee, Cindy Brown with you. The Bears start training camp in a few weeks. We know all the expectations. Could they perhaps maybe be one of the favorites in the NFC North? I know you don't like making predictions, Cheryl. We know that that's one of the things we love about you. But what do you think the ceiling is for the Bears this year? Is it 7 to 10 wins, something like that, or maybe 6 or 7? As we're seeing, others are predicting. So what do you think? What do you think the ceiling is for the Bears this year?
The ceiling is the shoulders of Justin Fields. He will be the main focus. He has been. I know he has been, but the thing with him, it's really important that he produces. It's really important that he is able to bring the team up to a level that should be able to win games. And if he can perform, I think they could win at least 8 games. I think they can.
Yeah. What else? What are the couple of factors? I know because you're going to cover training camp in a couple of weeks. What other areas are you looking forward to focusing on with the Bears? Is it their defense, which they improved, at least their linebacking core through free agency this offseason? And the offensive line is always talked about because of the ability of Justin Fields to run out of the pocket. What areas of the team are you going to focus on once training camp starts in a couple of weeks?
I want to see the weapons he has if they'll perform. I want to see Cole Kmet take another step. Darnell Mooney coming back from an injury is going to be really important. But the fact is that when they have an offensive line, and that is really key, they've moved some people around. They've drafted offensive linemen. You're going to see Tevin Jenkins, who's being moved. Cody Whitehair. These are players that have been there and know what their role is going to be. And talking to offensive line coach Chris Morgan, he feels pretty good about it. And what they have now at the offensive line, they have depth. They do have players that could come in if there's an injury or anything like that. But I'm curious about their secondary. Seeing Eddie Jackson coming back from his injury to see what he could do because he's important. Kyler Gordon, how has he made leaps? I do like Jaquan Brisker. I think he's really a good find there. So and it's going to this is going to be interesting to see how they are able to perform because there is going to be expectations on them. The defensive line Again, the linebacking core is the important factor for the way Matt Eberflus coaches. And I think that they got strength, they got power, and they got to produce sacks. They have to get sacks because that's something that they have not been able to pressure the quarterbacks enough.
What about Chase Claypool? Do you think you think he can kind of sort of like may have that breakout season that, of course, we all know what he didn't do up in Pittsburgh, got traded here, still not producing with injuries. So do you think he can have a breakout year this year?
He's an enigma. No one can figure him out. I mean, here's an golden opportunity to get a restart. And the fact is, Chase Claypool has all this talent, but there's something not clicking with him, as far as the game seems to be. He decided not to be at the practice setting, that he had some injuries, but we don't know enough about him. And if you look at his size and look what he did at Notre Dame, you think this guy should be a standout. Mm-hmm. He's a question mark.
Yeah.
We're hanging out with WBEZ Cheryl Rae Stout here on Second City Sports, the Monday edition, right here on Sports Zone Chicago. Sid Lakina hanging out here with you. One more question for you, Cheryl, about football before we move on. I know you predicted that you see the Bears winning around 7 to 8 games, but where do you see them against the rest of the division? Of course, Minnesota won in last year, going away. I don't think they're going to be the same this year. Detroit's the favorite this year, and the wild card is Green Bay with Jordan Love being the starter now. Where do you see the NFC North and where the Bears rank as the training camp approaches?
They should be able to contend. I think Detroit is going to be the team that everyone's going to have to beat in that division. I really think that and of course they've had a couple of suspensions because of their gambling issues, but I think that's a team that they're going to have to contend with. It's going to be interesting because I don't think the fans have to expect them to contend, but they should want them to contend at this point because we have to keep reminding ourselves they're still in these stages of a rebuild. In the NFL, it goes quicker than other sports. But the fact is, if they can take the next step, if they can at least contend, maybe they don't win the division, but at least force the issue, that would be a great step for them.
Let's switch gears here and talk some NBA for a little bit, talk about the Bulls. I mean, it looks like they're going to run it back. Of course, they brought Booch back. They've got Kobe White back. They got a couple of veterans, Javon Carter, who's a local kid, and also to Torrey Craig. So what do you think? Do you see the AK and Eversley making another big move, or are they just going to have to just stand pat and run it back?
Right now, I don't think they have. Well, I think what we got to see is when they finally get the answer from the NBA about the money they can get back from Lonzo Ball, when they could, because they're asking for $10 million of his contract because they know he's not going to play. So that's $10 million more that they can go out. So that's going to be a key. It's like, well, who do they sign? Who do they go after? Do they make a deal? I think when you look at the signings that they made with Carter and with Torrey, I think you actually answered a couple of questions there with some defense and also some 3-point shooting, because they were one of the worst teams in the NBA when it came to 3-point shooting. They didn't even attempt shots because they knew they weren't good at it, So that's a problem. And I did like the fact that they brought back Kobe White, but the East is going to be kind of interesting to see how everything shakes out. If Miami gets Damian Lillard, okay, it's done. It'll be Miami. But the East is kind of an interesting bag of tricks right now, and I'm kind of questioning how Zach LaVine takes another step. He's got to take another step. He's got to be more of a force than he is, and that's a factor. Right now they're just standing. They're kind of treading water. I don't know how good they're going to be, but I do think that money that they get back from Lonzo Ball, when the league finally decides that they can get $10 billion back, I think that's going to help them make another decision.
Yeah. Give us your stance on Billy Donovan, Cheryl, because we all know the stories that we heard last season with him and Zach LaVine having a couple of run-ins, and of course his offensive philosophy with Nikolai Vucevic being involved with the offense at times and then other times going away from him. Where is your stance on Billy Donovan? Assuming that the Bulls can hopefully turn it around next year, do you think he's the answer as head coach long-term outside of next year?
I appreciated Billy Donovan. because Billy Donovan is very transparent. The problem is AK only talks to the media a couple of times a year. He's the one that gives them the roster. I think Billy Donovan, he's had to handle a lot of things very judiciously. As far as X's note, I think he needs to give Vukovic the ball more. I think that and the problem he has, Zach LaVine, kind of a different dude now that he's got his money, and I'm just saying that's all I'll say about that. And I think it's something that we'll see if he will develop a better influence in the locker room than he is right now.
Let's talk some Blackhawks for a second, Cheryl. The Connor Bedard, of course, #1 pick. They brought on a couple of veteran guys to kind of help him out now roster. What do you think? Of course, the Hawks they're not probably going to be contending for another couple of years. But does this help them kind of accelerate things a little bit in the rebuild?
Sure, and it accelerated their fan base as far as buying the tickets.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. That's true.
Once everyone heard that they had the #1 pick and they knew who it was going to be, the tickets were being sold. This is a process, and I do like Luke Richardson. He's a very grounded guy, and he's and he has a plan, and he's going to execute it. And the fact is that Connor Bedard is going to be starting. He's going to be starting in the first line. That's where he's going to be. I wish that people could have heard, they have a 5th round draft pick, Marcel gave us the funniest, the best press. Did you guys get to hear it at all? It was one of the best press conferences I've ever heard from a player talking about. I got to tell you the story if you haven't heard it. He's from the Czech Republic. He was a 5th round take, and he didn't know that the Blackhawks were even going to draft him. He was with his family that he stays with in Canada, and he tells us he goes, we go, how'd you find out? He goes, I was in the toilet, and when I came out of the toilet, I found out the Blackhawks won. And we're like, and he goes on and tells, he goes, and I got a video of it, blah blah blah. And then someone said, hey, how did the Blackhawks and you communicate? He said, well, they came up to visit me up in Canada, and I had been suspended, and he started to go, and I go, wait. I said to him, what were you suspended for? He goes, I'm a big guy. He was a little guy. I kind of, and he goes, kind of. And I go, you only got 1 game? He goes, well, maybe 2, maybe 3. And we hands down won the media. I had to tell that story because nobody's heard enough. But they're making strides. And the fact is, the sad part about it is we don't have a Jonathan Taves or Patrick Kane around here anymore. And I'm hoping that Jonathan does retire and then was able to come to the United Center to have his sweater retired too. But they have to make sure that they got to get their defense a little more solidified. You're going to see some, movement up and down from Rockford to, Chicago. So you're going to see some movement with players, and they can afford to do this rebuild with fans in the stands. That's unique. That's really unique.
Mm-hmm.
We're heading down the home stretch with our girl Cheryl Rae Stout from WBEZ 91.5 FM Chicago, right here on Second City Sports. So on Sports Zone Chicago, Lakina Sid hanging out here with you. Cheryl, let's go to the Northwestern football. Of course, the news came out last Friday about alleged hazing. Of course, the school president came out on Saturday and said that he may have made an error in judgment about suspending football head coach Pat Fitzgerald for 2 weeks. And, of course, former players are saying that this alleged hazing happened when they were playing. Of course, a couple of the current players said that those reports are lies. I know you covered stories like this throughout your career. I don't think it takes a genius to figure out that this is just only the beginning. What are your thoughts about this, and where do you think it ultimately ends up?
I'll tell you, I have to give my hats off to the student newspaper, the Daily Northwestern, because once Northwestern dropped the story on a Friday, that's a news dump time. And so they wanted to be swept underneath the rug. And they only gave the suspension, and they closed down Camp Kenosha, and they're going to have a non-staff member being in the locker room. And then the newspaper gets the player to talk on the record as far as what happened. He was unnamed, but he gave the specific, and another player said, yes, this did happen. And of course the player said no, but the details, I think everyone should read what those young writers wrote, the details that they wrote of that, the sexual hazing that they did, that was horrifying. And if you're a parent of a player that's going to go to Northwestern, you got to have questions, and those questions have to be answered. And it took the student newspaper to make the president say that night in the statement saying, oh, we erred in the sections. We're going to have to look at this. This is going to have long-term effect. You know, the 2 weeks, which was done for, he was going to be suspended in the summer for 2 weeks, where it doesn't matter. There's a few things that have to happen. Some people have to come forward. Their athletic director, Derek Gregg, has to come forward and talk about this. The president of the school, Michael Schill, has to come forward and talk about this. This cannot be silent, because we're talking about young men, and some of them, from the reporting, had suicidal thoughts after this hazing. And that's scary. As a parent, you would have to be frightened to know that that was a possibility. And the fact is, the head coach, even though they said that Pat Fitzgerald, some of the players are saying he didn't know about it. He didn't know about it? How does he not know about it? In every sport that I've covered, especially on a high school and college level, the coaches know about it, or their team captains know about it, and they report to him about it. So that's what's really bothersome to me about this whole story, is saying that Pat Fitzgerald did not know about it. There's no doubt he had to know something about it, or if he didn't, shame on him for not knowing.
Well, it's even worse. Shout out to those 4 reporters that broke this story over the weekend at the Daily Northwestern, the student paper there. Apparently now there's an article. I don't know if you saw this, guys, but apparently 3 former players have come forward saying that that Northwestern, the football program, has had a culture of enabling racism. So, on top of everything else that I know you guys mentioned it before I came back on, now you're talking about enabling racism. Look, I've been a Coach Fitz fan since he was in high school, but it's hard for me to believe that he didn't know any of this. I find that very hard to believe. I wonder what you think about that, Cheryl.
Oh, I totally concur. I totally concur that that's the way it does happen. He had to know about it, and his future hangs in the balance right now. And I believe, like you said, I think there's going to be more and more players that are going to come out, and it's going to suffocate the players that said it didn't happen. Because the players that said it didn't happen, my curiosity is, were they participants in the hazing? Are those players that could have legal action against them? That's my question about that. So if you're part of that community that was part of the hazing, of course you're going to say it didn't happen. Of course you're going to say the head coach didn't know about it. That's where I'm curious.
Okay. Last question from me, Cheryl. Of course, the home run derby is tonight with the MLB All-Star Game. I think a little guy, Mr. Lee's Rob, would like to say hi to you. What kind of chances do you give him to win the home run derby tonight?
He's the number 1 seed. He's the number 1 seed. How cool is that? When we talked last week, and it was funny is the other Cuban players convinced him to do it, and so he's doing it for a lot of good reasons. One, for his country, and the only thing is you hope he isn't too nervous. He's a young guy, and he's really he's the only shining light as far as position players for the White Sox this year. And you would love to see him do it. Just something positive, because the White Sox, I'm saying it to you guys, as White Sox fans, you got to be dying not to see anything positive. So this would be good for you guys. So you could go to bed tonight and go, hey, you won, and feel better for the rest of the All-Star break before the season begins on Friday.
Four days White Sox baseball. Praise the Lord. Now, last question for me, sure. I want to send on a let's say, a somewhat happy note, but do you think that the Cubs can make the playoffs? Do you think, if at the very least, will I know you said that earlier that they could be sellers, but could they still be buyers? I mean, that division is not very good, in my opinion. That NL Central, well, not as bad as the AL Central, but the NL Central is pretty bad too.
I think it'd be fool's gold to do that. I think because the only way they get in the postseason if they win the division, and they still have some real weaknesses on their and it's not going to be one or two trades is not going to make it happen. It's going to. I just don't think that they have. I don't think that they have the wherewithal. The fact is, when they were in London and when they came back, they should have been able to hit the ground running, and they didn't, and that's concerning for them. Yeah, they beat the Yankees, 2 out of 3, but the Yankees stink too. They're not any good.
That's fair.
It'd be nice for Cub fans to see that, but I think it's too early in the process for them to get to that point. They only spent $2 million in this offseason too.
Right,
Yeah.
that's true. Yeah.
All right, that's been our good friend, Miss Cheryl Rae Stout. She's a Chicago broadcasting legend, a young broadcasting legend. She's out of WBEZ 91. She's out of 91.5 FM WBEZ in Chicago. You can follow her on Twitter as C Rae Stout. That's the letter C Rae Stout. Cheryl, it was nice seeing you yesterday on TV with another couple of good friends of ours for this show. Dion Miller and Marshall Harris from CBS 2 Chicago Marquee Sports Network's The Reporters. You guys did a great job yesterday. So it was nice seeing you again on TV, and we'll give you a couple claps for that. So thank you very much for taking time on your busy schedule to join us as always. You keep up the great work, and let's do this again down the road.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Take
care.
No, thank you. Take care. Stay safe. All right, of course, that's Cheryl Rae Stout for WBEZ. Now, Sid, I gotta, it's always great when we have her on, because she shares great stories and such. So yeah, always great to have her on. So we're gonna take a towel off and take a quick, 2 and 2, as the kids would say. Of course, we're gonna talk about the NBA and of course Victor Wembanyama's debut in the summer league. Also, too, some changes in the mindset for the U.S. men's basketball team going into Paris next summer, and of course some big things happening over there at Wimbledon, and also to Old School TV Monday. So Sid's got a great one for you, as he usually does.
Oh, yes.
So we're great stuff coming up as we wrap things up here. Lakeem McGee, Cindy Brown, Second City Sports on Sports on Chicago. We're going to go wrap around coming up right after this.
This year, my mom got me the perfect bag for back to school.
These colorful binders help me stay organized.
These headphones are just what I need for studying.
These new sneakers are just what I needed for the new year.
This jacket is a real must-have.
My parents got me the skateboard I wanted. It's pretty cool.
These scissors really come in handy in art class. These colored pencils, too.
These new socks, they can be a real lifesaver.
I finally got my own phone to stay in touch with my mom.
Trisha's having a sleepover tonight. Can I go?
I wonder about Lucy's friends. What should I say? I know you're only 10, but one of these days a friend will offer you a drink. And alcohol at your age can lead to so many things. None of them good.
So can I go to the sleepover?
Lucy, I want you to promise me
I
something.
finished my homework.
Bigger promise. If there's any drinking, I want you to say, "No thanks, not my thing."
Mom.
I promise you, your real friends won't care. Deal?
Sure.
Really?
I promise, Mom.
They really do hear you.
Did you pack your toothbrush?
For tips on how to start the talk, visit underagedrinking.samhsa.gov. A public service message from the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration.
Hey, this is Dr. J, and I listen to Sean and Maya in the morning.
Welcome back to Second City Sports on the Monday edition. We're live in the living color right here on Sports Zone Chicago. This is our last break for the show for today. I'm Sid, that's Lakina. You can follow yours truly on the Twitter and the IG at SidKid80. Once again, it's SidKid80. That's SIDKID80. That's SIDKID80.
You can follow me at Kingdom McGee on the Twitter and at Kiosko again, the IG.
We have less than 25 minutes left or so on this extravaganza we call a Sports Talk Radio Show. If you have any questions or comments for us, you can always hit us up in the comments section at Sports Zone Chicago's Facebook page or at Sports Zone Chicago on YouTube. Type in those questions or comments in the comments section. Lakina will get the up on the screen for you. Lakina, real quick before we get to Summer League and Victor Wembanyama and all the other stuff that's going on in Vegas right now, just wanted to get your quick opinion about the Northwestern football situation. Of course, we talked about it with our guest Cheryl Rae Stout in our last break. I think she mentioned it, and I agree with her 100% that how ironic is it that you make this story least important, dump it on a Friday, which most people are not paying attention, especially during the summertime and during the off season of college football. And I'm glad you brought up the question and gave props to the student journalists with the Northwestern school newspaper, because journalism is real important, folks. It's more important now more than ever, especially with social media out here. Anybody can make up some stuff and people run with it like it's gospel, and we know 9 times out of 10 it's not. So, like you said, shout out to those student reporters at the Northwestern's daily newspaper. That they should be commended on it. But I wanted to get your thoughts about the whole situation, where you think it ends up, because it doesn't take a rocket scientist to see that this is only the beginning. And I know that they'll have media day come up in a few weeks here, in a couple weeks, I think 2 or 3 weeks, if my math is correct. But Northwestern really cannot stay silent with this, because this is going to become a bigger distraction. You think it's a mess now. If you wait till Big Ten Media Day to address all this stuff, it's really going to get ugly. It's going to get ugly no matter what. But if you just stay silent, pretend that nothing's happening, there's nothing to see here, you're sadly mistaken.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of came out of sort of nowhere. I know that Adam Rindenberg from ESPN and a few others who cover college football reported that, there was some hazing. And, of course, allegedly, Coach Fitzgerald didn't know. And we're going to suspend him without pay for 2 weeks. But then, like we said, shout out to those 4 student reporters at the Daily Northwestern that kind of spearhead all this. They actually talked to players. I know I think the editor-in-chief, I think she was on with Bernstein earlier, about an hour ago. I'm sure the podcast will be up on Audacity through their 670 Discord through their Audacity app. But it's definitely kind of one of those days where, of course, as I brought up earlier, with the New York Times, decimating their sports division, also the LA Times decimating their sports division. This is kind of thing where I think this stuff is more important than ever, like you said. And shout out to those 2 reporters, because we probably would not have known what was going on, like the meat and potatoes of it. Maybe until it's too late. Excuse me. And it's hard for me to believe that, of course, Fitzgerald, who, like I said, I've been a fan of since he was in high school. Stayed up from suburban Chicago, but it's sort of it's hard for me to think that he survives all this, especially since more and more stuff I'm sure will come out about all this. So with the hazing and the racism and all that, and sexual assaults, and some of these players and that were victims of this, came to suicide. Of course, those players came out with this statement, like Cheryl said, but it sounds like were they a part of that? So things are getting messy over there at Northwestern. Of course, it doesn't help that they didn't have a great season last year. They had that 1 win in Ireland against Nebraska, but that was about it. They were just kind of bone rush for like the rest of the season for the most part. So all this is starting to manifest, and I think, look, they've got a lot to think about, and I think it's hard for me to see that that Coach Fitzgerald survives this.
Yeah, I know that we in the media want to jump to conclusions early and things along that line, especially now with the age of we're in, and not just the internet, but social media in general. But reading through all that stuff and listen to various folks talk about it. A great job by our good friend of the show, NBC5 sports anchor Mike Berman. He had Adam Renberg from ESPN.com on Sports Sunday last night. If that's available on the NBC5 Sports NBC Chicago's website, please go check it out. But Mike Berman asked him a question about how long has it been going on. Of course, Renberg said that he's been covering this story since January. So, and in January, no one focuses on any other team in college football except for the teams that are playing in the college football playoff. But it's interesting to see that all this is still going on in 2023. Should we be surprised? Unfortunately not, but let's not hide our heads in the sands here. All forms of crazy forms of hazing has been going on in professional sports, but in college sports in particular for a long time. And it's nothing new. Now, will this be the last time we hear something like this? No. Every program goes through certain forms of hazing, but how far is too far is really the question here. And I came to the same conclusion last night as you have, Lakina, what you just said. I don't think Pat Fitzgerald survives this. The last great season they had was 2020, and that's when they went to the Big Ten title game. He's been there for 16 years. He has 1-2 good seasons followed by 3 or 4 bad seasons. Right now, he's going through that cycle, having multiple bad seasons in a row. I don't think that ultimately he survives this either, Lakina. Like I said, this is a avalanche is starting to fall. We're just in the beginning stages of it. I don't see how Pat Fitzgerald coaches ever again, at least not for Northwestern anyway. I know there was reports talking about he may be suspended for the first half of the year. I don't think that's going to do anything. Like I said, I think there's more stuff that's going to come out about this. I don't think when we get to the last weekend of August, he's going to be coaching Northwestern. I don't see it. Maybe I'm wrong, but I'm putting two together and making some common sense out of this. I don't think he survives this.
Yeah, it's definitely so when I heard that interview too with our buddy Mike with Mr. Rittenberg from ESPN, and the fact that he said that he's been covering this since January and this is all starting to come out in early July makes you wonder that okay, someone had to have known something even beforehand, and like I said, it wasn't until those student journalists over at the Daily Northwestern were kind of the ones that kind of brought this to light. I mean, you don't do that kind of a news stuff on a late Friday night, early Saturday morning, to sort of like in the middle of a dead time in college football where no one's practicing right now. You hope that maybe it'll be swept under the rug, but it turned out to not be a case. It's just starting to kind of manifest and everything else. So I think like I said, I think it's going to get bigger before we have answers to all this. I mean, they may be thinking about an exit strategy right now. I know they said they're going to look into other stuff, but since more and more stuff's coming out, it's making it harder and harder for him for Coach Fitzgerald to keep his job, I think.
Yeah, and I think that's what's going to end up happening here. But like you said, this is just the only beginning, and more stuff will come out. How severe is it? How bad will it get? Like I said, with Big Ten media around the corner, it could get worse not only just for them, but maybe, like I say, it's going to put a big stain on the Big Ten Conference. It shouldn't be that way, but I think more things are going to, like you said, are going to come out, and we're going to hear some more disturbing details, unfortunately. But behavior like this to the extreme needs to stop, and we'll see what happens when all this is said and done. You're listening to Second City Sports on Sports Zone Chicago. Sid Lakina hanging out here with you. We still have more time left, Lakina, before we close out today's show. Let's talk about the NBA. The Summer League is off and running. I know the Bulls, if you pay attention to the Bulls, there have been kind of mixed results there in Vegas for the Summer League is concerned. Of course, Zach LaVine is down there. Of course, Alex Caruso's down there. DeMar DeRozan is down there as well. But I want to talk about Victor Wembanyama's debut last Friday, Lakina, against the Charlotte Hornets. Of course, ESPN kissed his butt, and rightfully so to an extent to sell the product. But Victor Wembanyama didn't have a good game, but Lakina, I was reading some stuff on social media. I'm sure you were too. But, people are calling him a buzz. He's overrated. He needs to put on some muscle, which he said he needed to do. Is going to happen through time. But as far as his game is concerned, people are ready to throw in the towel. And it's Summer League, folks. I think we said this before we started broadcasting live. This is Summer League, folks. Things take time. And the players that he's playing against, Not even have them going to be in training camp by the time the season starts in the fall. Stop.
Do people even know how summer league works? I mean, you're not
exactly.
You're not going to be you're not facing Kevin Durant. You're not facing Steph Curry. You're not facing Dame. You're facing guys for the most part they're going to either be rookies, guys that were drafted, G League guys for the most part, guys literally off the street. So yeah, I think for anybody that's oh my God, he sucks, he's a bust. Guys, relax. It's the summer league, folks. I just told you the type of player he's going to be. He's not playing against the top players right away in this. This is what summer league is all about. So it's just silly that there are already people saying he's a bust. I mean, it's just we're in a microwave society, unfortunately. So it's just silly that people are saying this. But the Bulls had a mixture. So they won one game, but they lost. I think they lost the one that from on Saturday. So, but yeah, they did win. They're 1-1, I believe, in G League play so far. But I mean, look, it's sort of one of those days where you're kind of like, okay, you get to look at some basketball from Vegas for a few weeks. That's all. That's kind of what Summer League is about. So I know our buddies from CHGO Bulls, Matt Peck and Big Dave Watson, and of course, Will Gottlieb there. I think he's there too. They're enjoying a little bit of Vegas.
They're having fun if you watch through their social media accounts.
Yes. Yeah, exactly.
Hopefully, none of them get in trouble, i.e., Matt. LOL, just kidding, man.
Right. So yeah, it's gonna be interesting to see what happens with that. But yeah, it's kind of like okay, like I said, it's gonna be interesting. Like I said, especially with Coach Pop just signed a new extension. He's gonna be 80 years old by the time that contract's over with. So he's probably gonna play 100, knowing him. So yeah, it's kind of interesting. But yeah, it's sort of it'll be like I said. I'm not throwing a towel on Wembanyama just yet. I know. Look, it's summer league, folks. I mean, chill, relax. He's only 18.
But I noticed, I know ESPN talked about this too. I want to get your thoughts on this. I don't think we touched this angle yet, but and you mentioned Coach Greg Popovich. He was sitting in the front row on that game on Friday, last Friday night.
Yep.
Yeah, I think it was Doris Burke who brought up this point on the broadcast Friday. That Greg Popovich is the king of, I'm not gonna say tanking, but load management, which is everybody in the league is doing now. He did that a decade ago out of spite with now RIP Commissioner, the late Commissioner David Stern. But you think that Victor Wembanyama is going to play all 82 games? Selfishly, I wish he would, but I don't. You really can't predict that. But just for the sake of this conversation, I don't think he's going to play 82 games. Let's just say that if Victor is healthy for the majority of the year, you don't think that Greg Popovich is going to see him for at least 5-6 games? Or for at least up to 10, let's say 82 minus 10, that's 72 games. You think Victor Wembanyama is going to play at least between 60 and 65 games to be fair? Assuming that he stays healthy for the most part?
Well, he's going to, I know he's 18, but like I said, he needs to add some muscle to his legs and other stuff too. So I think he needs to, I don't think he's going to be playing them that much. He may play like maybe 75, maybe 75 games at most. But let's talk about this real quick. We didn't get to talk about it on Friday when this came out. But the NBA officially unveiled its new formatted in-season tournaments and the NBA Cup. Teams will be playing before with the MTK for a tournament. Is going to be a culmination of a vision. Of course, Adam Silver's won this for years now. We want to do kind of like a European style, and soccer. Well, they do some European basketball too with their kind of their cup style and whatnot. What do you think? I mean, do you really think if you're, I guess the way the group's going to be, going to be laid out, it's going to be 6 5-team groups, 3 made up of Eastern Conference teams and 3 made up of Western Conference foes, and will make up the group stage of the tournament. And I believe the Bulls, let me see, they're in a group with Boston, Brooklyn, Toronto, and Orlando. I guess the top, finishers from that will go into the, I guess, to the quarterfinals and how that's set up, but. It's just like, are we seriously doing this? I mean, like, do you really talk about load management, Sid? Especially, do you really think you're going to see KD and Steph and Joel Embiid, especially with the Olympics coming up next year? Do you really think they're going to be seeing these guys, playing in an in-season tournament? Are you freaking kidding me? It'll probably end up being summer league in the middle of winter. So, it's just the absurdity of all this is just like, wait, are we really doing this? Are you kidding? Like, I can just shrug my shoulders on this. I'm shrugging my shoulders, folks, for those who are going to be watching this, who are listening to that world media.
Yeah. Speaking of summer league, I think the semifinals and the finals, which will be held on December 9th of next season, 2023. For the 2023-24 season. It'll be held December 7th and December 9th in Las Vegas. So you'll get that Vegas flavor in the middle of the late fall, early winter. So you're correct on that. But we all know that this is a attention grab, it's a money grab, and we said this for years, Lakina, that unfortunately the NBA regular season, except for a few matchups here and there, that the league, many of these teams and these coaches don't take the regular season seriously anymore because of low management. It's all about the playoffs. Yes, we get it. The second season is important, but the many teams don't take the regular season seriously anymore. You saw what they're doing to the NBA All-Star game, which is a whole nother conversation, a whole nother time. But I think this is just for people. The NBA is trying to get people, especially they don't pay attention to basketball the first couple months of the season, to get interested in basketball. Will this work? We'll see, because remember, you're coming right up at the end of the college football season before you get to the bowl season. And you're right in the stretch drive for the NFL.
Yep.
Well, for the drive to the playoffs. So it's going to be interesting to see how many will the games be competitive and how many viewers are going to watch this, because I think you'll have some viewers that will watch it because this is the first time they've ever done this. But if the games are not competitive, those ratings are not going to be as high as they thought.
Well, yeah, I think it's going to be definitely going to be a curiosity factor with this. But like you said, I mean, with the low management and whatnot, I mean, this is going to be interesting to see how many people, especially like you said, you're in the middle of college, the college hoop season will just be starting, and I think college football I think they might be finished by the time this kind of rolls around. They might be getting ready to finish up, so you're going to be competing against that, compete against the NFL, depending on how the schedule is set up. I haven't get a chance to look at the schedule yet, but I think people are going to be, like you said, going to be curious to see what happens with this, because I'm thinking that, okay, these games, like you said, we better get some of the big stars playing these games, and they're very competitive because no one's going to watch if going to be seeing some guy from the G League, the Warriors G League team. Well, they actually don't have a G League team, but I'm saying, but it's just like kind of like really. So yeah, it's gonna be interesting what they do. But yeah, I'm kind of I'm intrigued, but I'm kind of like doing the kind of like the really sort of face.
Yeah, same here. Like I said, we have to watch it because this is what we do. We talk about everything that happens in the world of sports, so we have to watch it. But if we weren't doing this, well, I'll be watching. Yeah, but. But I'm giving the side out of this one. We'll see what happens. So, of course, the play-in tournament for the NBA starts next season. It'll start in the month of November, I believe, and it'll go on for about a month until December 7th and December 9th will be the semifinals and the finals. So those will be the knockout rounds. They'll take place in Las Vegas. And so we'll see what happens with that. You're listening to Second City Sports on Sports Zone Chicago, the Monday edition. Heading down the home stretch here. I'm Sid. That's Lakina. Lakina, let's talk about Wimbledon. I had a chance to watch a couple of highlights this morning because, I've been wrapped up in bad White Sox baseball over the weekend. But my girl, Massey Keys, won today. Yay! Yeah. And Jokic won. For those of you that – I don't hate him, but I respect him. For those of you that fancy his, yay!
Yeah, very good showing. He actually had to come back and finish his match because, of course, the curfew there over at Wimbledon is like 1 a.m. their time, so they had to, he had to stop, they had to stop that match, and of course he ended up finishing up, that match, his match there. So yeah, very, so he didn't want to get. I'm sure he didn't want to exert too much energy because he had to come back and play again tomorrow. So, but I'm sure he was glad he was able to get out of that match. But 6-4 against Hubert Hurkacz of Poland. Christopher Eubanks, of course, continuing his Cinderella run, if you will. Of course, won a warm-up tournament. Not a couple of weeks back in South England. Then he won another tournament in Mallorca on the clay court. So he came back and beat Stefanos Tsitsipas in 5 sets. That was a 5-set match. He'll face Daniil Medvedev, who got a little bit of a rest because his opponent Yuri the Heka, of course he had to pull out because of a hamstring injury, so unfortunately he wasn't able to finish that. But he got a little bit of that's really interesting match too between him and Eubanks tomorrow. On the women's side, like you said, of course our girl Madison Keys, 6-2 got out of that pretty easily there in that third set. Of course, Ila Swiatek, of course she won over the on yesterday. So I think Madison Keys may have a shot. I mean, I know she's had some injuries. You thought that maybe made a couple of finals or semifinals, just say some Grand Slams. You thought that maybe she might, break through and win, of course, injuries, but she looks great. She's healthy. She won a warm-up tournament a couple of weeks ago. So you got to think that maybe she might be poised to perhaps get her first Grand Slam title. We'll see there. So, yeah, interesting things happening over at Wimbledon so far. Of course, you got Carlos Alcaraz, who's the #1 seed on the men's side. Of course, getting a little bit of a tough go at it for Matteo Berrettini from Italy. So he's up a set and a break there. So we'll see. They're on serve, I should say. So we'll see what he's up two sets, I should say, and well, actually, up there. So one set a piece and he's up a break. So he's getting a little bit of a tough go out of here from Berrettini. So we'll see what happens with that match. But yeah, some interesting things happening over in Wimbledon so far.
Yeah, yep. So Wimbledon is going on right now. You can watch that on ESPN and ESPN2. Of course, I believe they're in around the 16 now. So the field is starting to shrink a little bit. So that's what's going on in London, England right now. One more sports note before we get to Old School TV Monday. Did you catch any of the women's U.S. Open? We had a U.S. golfer winning for the first time, a U.S.-born player winning for the first time since 2016.
Yeah, 26. It's been like what? Like I think Lexi Thompson was the last person that did it, and I think that she was like I said, in 2016. So it's been a while since since an American-born player has won it. It's actually her first LGBT Tour event title. So yeah, Allison Corputz, I think that's not how you say her name, but yeah, she's 25 years old. I believe she's from California. Of course, she joins Lila Vu as major winners representing the U.S. this year. Of course, there's two U.S.-born players. Of course, it's only the first time that someone's won the U.S. Open. The U.S. Women's Open, I should say, since like I said, Lexi Thompson did it. Actually, also Michelle Wee did it, prior the Open Championship there as well. So, it looks like things are starting to kind of go. I think people are wondering when will the U.S. side, will the women have some young golfers? We're seeing it more and more these last two majors, both winning, U.S. born players winning it. So this could definitely help the LPGA Tour immensely. So, congrats to Allison, and we'll see if this could be like the kind of tie that turns for the LPGA.
All right, you're listening to Second City Sports on Sports Zone Chicago. Sid Lakina hanging out here with you for the Monday edition. All right, Lakina, let's end this episode today on a lighter note, hopefully, but definitely on an exciting, surprising note as we kick it now over to Old School TV Monday. Today, let's go to NYC and hang out with the liberal, yelling, talking, stand up for your rights, feminist, Miss Maud Finley. That's right. You're not too upset now, yet, Lakina?
No.
Okay, good. Okay, I can continue. I thought I was going to get the boot. Maud was an American sitcom television series that originally broadcasted on the CBS network from September 12, 1972 until April 22nd, 1978. Maud stars B. Arthur as Maud Finley, an outspoken, middle-aged, politically liberal woman living in suburban Tuckahoe, New York, with her fourth husband, household appliance store owner Walter Finley, played by Bill Macy. Maud embraces the tenets of women's liberation, always votes for the Democratic Party candidates, and advocates for civil rights and racial and gender equality. However, her overbearing and sometimes dominant personality often gets her into trouble when speaking about these issues. The show was a spinoff of All in the Family, which Arthur made 2 appearances as Maud, Edith Bunker's favorite cousin. Like All in the Family, Maud was a sitcom with topical storylines created by producers Norman Lear and Bud Yorkin. Unusual for an American sitcom, several episodes only featured the characters of Maud and her husband Walter in what amounted to a half-hour, two-hander teleplays. In the season 4 episode, The Analyst, Arthur as Maud, speaking to an unseen psychiatrist, was the sole actor on screen for the entire episode. The show's theme song, which is a kick-ass theme song, by the way, and then there was Maud, was written by Alan and Marilyn Bergman and Dave Gruza and performed by Donny Hathaway.
Yeah, I didn't know. Yeah, I didn't know about that. Yeah, we can't sing it, of course. We don't have the rights to it, but I think Maud was sort of like, the Maud was definitely one of those shows. They kind of came into, sort of like, the Mary Tyler Moore's, Maud. Of course, in Maud's case, she had been, I think she was widowed like once or twice, and had been divorced once as well.
Mm-hmm.
But but like I said before, of course, B. Arthur did an amazing job. She did win an Emmy, I believe, in 1977 for it. And I'll tell you, it's gonna look. It wasn't afraid to kind of go there. Of course, it's a Norman Lear sitcom, so of course they weren't afraid to go there. They talked about racism. They talked about abortion. They were one of the first shows to talk about abortion. This is when Roe v. Wade, of course, before that nonsense happened last summer. But I digress. But yeah, I mean, when it first kind of became illegal to have an abortion nationwide, they actually did an episode. They got some pushback. I remember Norma Lear said they got some pushback from that episode because a lot of the Southern affiliates didn't want to show it. Big shocker there. And so it was a lot of stuff they had to fight to get that episode to air. But yeah, give Norman Lear credit. I mean, he still has his hands in a lot of these shows, some of these shows now, even at 90 years old. He just turned 90 last fall. So, he's still doing his thing. But yeah, I mean, look at some of the stars that, that came on before then. Conrad Bain, a pre-Mr. Drummond, he played one of their friends. Arthur, Vivian was played by Rue McClanahan, of course.
Yes, before Golden Girls. Yes.
Yep. She and Bea worked together beforehand. Of course, Adrienne Barbeau played Ma's daughter from, I think, her second husband, if I'm not mistaken. I might be a little bit off there with the timing, but yeah, she still looks great after all these years. Yeah, I mean, look, Mom was one of those shows where you either liked her, whether you liked it or hated it. It definitely made an impact on various things. They talked about menopause. They talked about abortion. They talked about race, among many other things. So yeah, but they did it in a very funny way, and I'm sure that was hard to do, especially back in the 70s. They were still in the middle of the Vietnam War, and among other things that were going on at the time. So
yeah, civil rights busing and all that.
Yes, yeah. So Maude was definitely a show that kind of helped sort of veer to that, and they weren't afraid to talk about those types of issues too, like you said, like with race and women's lib and all that. So yeah, I think Maude was one of those great shows that definitely made an impact on television.
Yes, and don't forget about the late great Esther Rose. She got her start on there as well, and of course, who played her husband John Amos. Remember, they called him Henry James on the show, and then of course they called him James once they started up Good Times. Of course, Good Times was a spinoff from Maude, but like you said, they weren't afraid to go. Get down dirty with it as far as the issues of the times were concerned. Of course, she was the female version of Archie Bunker. Yep. They were much alike than they were apart. They were really apart as far as politically were concerned, but they had the same no nonsense. They'll stick to their guns personality. They were very. I'm talking about Maude and Archie Bunker. They were very similar in a lot of ways, except for when it came to political ideologies.
Right. So yeah, and they didn't like each other. So yeah, that definitely helped. That sense. I mean, he didn't like her. She didn't like him, and of course, Edith loved her. That was her favorite cousin. So that they saw what a big hit she was. And look, Bea Arthur, I think, kind of like we saw what a testament she was, what a gem she was. I mean, she was she did the Urkel dance with Jaleel White when that became a big thing back in the early '90s. I mean, she helped a lot of LGBTQ plus groups. I mean, she, of course, women's, rights and all that. So yeah, so she was one of those sort of the epitome of, she was basically kind of like Maude in that sense, that she was very outspoken, sort of like that liberation sort of thing that was starting to happen during the second half of the 20th century. So she definitely kind of like epitomized what America was going with, especially when it came to women's rights and such.
I would ask you, would this show work today, but I would say yes, but the climate that we're in right now, there are so many higher ups that'll be afraid to they'll kind of change the message and basically water it down. So I think it would work, but in reality, I don't think it's that kind of comedy will work today because only the political climate that we're in, and so many people are just afraid of the truth. Let's be honest, Lakita. Many people want the truth, give it to them in doses, in nice little bitty packages, but we all know that the truth doesn't care about your feelings and anything else that's foolish. So, but it was a great show. My mom introduced it to me when I was younger. Of course, it's been reran on cable and other outlets across the country for years. So I think you can still catch some of that on YouTube, and I know it's still on Antenna TV, I believe, in the wee hours of the morning on the weekends or so. And so you can catch it there.
Yeah, I think it's on Pluto TV too. If you have Pluto TV, it's free. I think they have like a whole they got a whole like section of various TV shows from yesteryear that you can watch. So I think it's on there. I think it was like the first two. I think the first two seasons are on there, though. They don't have the full run of the show yet. So I think they might just start that. I think they are going to have that out at some point. But yeah, you can still watch. It's streaming somewhere, so you can definitely check it out as well. Now, as far as could it work maybe now? Probably not, because unless maybe the only place you can probably stream, unless it's on like Amazon or Netflix or Hulu, I could probably see it working there, but I can't see it working on a regular broadcast television. I don't think it will work there anymore for the reason you said.
Yeah. And so our old school TV Monday salute is to the CBS TV sitcom from the 1970s, Maude. Lakina closes out.
Okay, on that note, you follow me, King McGee, on the Twitter, and the King's going to be on the IG.
You can follow yours truly, Sydney Brown, on the Twitter and the IG at SidKid80. Once again, that's SidKid80. That's SIDKID80. That's SIDKID80.
All right, you can follow this show. Check out our show every Monday and every Friday right here on Sports Zone Chicago from noon to 2 p.m. Central Standard Time. Of course, you can catch the replays of it as well at various times. Also, too, you can catch us at War Media if you'd rather listen to us instead. No problem. You can catch us wherever you get your podcasts. Just type in War Media Podcast. It is right there for you anytime, anywhere.
Yes. And don't forget, you can also catch Sports Zone Chicago live and on demand on Roku TV.
All right, everybody. So, first, enjoy the All-Star Weekend coming up. The All-Star Weekend, I should say, coming up. You got the SP Awards coming up on Wednesday. Of course, you got the game, All-Star game itself coming up tomorrow. Home Run Derby, go Luis Robert Jr. Tonight.
Yay!
And also just a celebrity softball game. Of course, Zach Levine hit a couple of home runs there in that.
Yeah, he made a tremendous catch in the outfield. Robinson won the home run.
Yeah, so you guys checked out the replay of that as well tonight as well. It's coming after the Home Run Derby, so Lord knows it could be like midnight by the time, because we know how long the Home Run Derby is, even the time.
Yes.
But I'm sure they'll repeat. I'm sure within the next couple of days. So you guys should definitely just check it out there. Just keep your eye out for it on your local TV listings and whatnot. Or I'm sure they're going to stream it up too on ESPN Plus. But yeah, so enjoy the All-Star Weekend coming up. And enjoy this sort of dead time in sports. Remember, we're going to have folks coming on to talk about the Bears and such. So these next couple of weeks before training camp. So definitely look us out for that. So for Sid, I'm LaKean. This is Second Sports on Sports Zone Chicago, and we will see you Friday, folks. Our regular spot Friday.
Right on, Maud. Holla!